Hello everyone. I know you watch this video to accompany you to sleep. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to tell me where you are from and what time you watch this video. The tragic case of Francis Choi, a fight for justice. Justice often appears straightforward, but reality is far more complex. In an ideal world, justice is blind and impartial, yet reality frequently defies that ideal. Such was the case for Francis Choi, a young woman from Massachusetts, whose life turned into a harrowing journey. To prove her innocence after a tragic fire in 2003 claimed her parents' lives. The night of the fire, at 4:50 a.m. on April 17, 2003, Frances was jolted awake by her mother's desperate screams of fire. Flames devoured the doorway, and black smoke seeped through the cracks. Acting instinctively, she dialed 911 and cried for help through an open window. The Brockton Fire Department responded swiftly, battling the flames that threatened to engulf the family home. Frances and her nephew, Kenneth, were rescued from second-floor bedrooms, but her parents remained trapped. Despite the firefighters' efforts, Frances's parents were found unconscious, overcome by toxic smoke. The family consisted of Frances, 17, her parents, Jimmy, 64, and his wife, 53, and Kenneth, 16, the grandson living with them after the tragic suicide of Jimmy's son in 2000. The investigation begins. What first seemed like a tragic accident soon turned suspicious. Firefighters noticed a potent smell of gasoline upon entering the house. They discovered 4 gasoline containers, 2 baby formula cans, and 2 beverage bottles, implying deliberate arson. The fire's origin appeared internal, with no signs of forced entry. The most severe damage was in the master bedroom, where Jimmy and his wife slept. Investigators faced an unsettling question. Could a family member be responsible? Turning suspicion to accusation. Both Frances and Kenneth claimed ignorance about the fire's cause. However, a police dog detected traces of gasoline on Frances's sweatpants, raising suspicion. During a questioning session en route to the hospital, police pressed Frances for answers. Tragically, Jimmy passed away that evening, deepening the family's loss and intensifying the investigation. Hours later, police uncovered 2 damning pieces of evidence. First, they discovered 2 handwritten arson plans under Kenneth's bed. The first detailed a scheme involving gasoline, including precise instructions on where to pour the fuel and how to ignite it. The second outlined a similar plan using gas. Forensic analysis confirmed Kenneth's handwriting on both notes. Additionally, a partially burnt towel was found near Kenneth's door, an apparent attempt to block smoke. When questioned, Kenneth initially denied involvement, but later, under pressure, gave conflicting statements. He accused his Aunt Frances, alleging she orchestrated the fire for insurance money, driven by frustration with her restrictive life at home. Kenneth claimed Frances wanted the freedom to live in a college dorm and escape her grandparents' strict rules. He alleged she offered him $110,000 as a reward for his silence. The turning point. During a tense confrontation, Frances vehemently denied involvement. Yet, after hours of relentless questioning, she blurted, "I was involved," only to immediately retract the statement, claiming it was made in frustration. The police, however, treated this as a confession. Frances was arrested that night for arson and murder. The aftermath media narratives swiftly shifted. Headlines transformed from "Smart girl calls 911, saves 2 lives," to "Girl sets fire to home, kills parents." Both Frances and Kenneth were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and arson. Prosecutors argued that Francis's motive was financial gain from insurance payouts. But was justice truly served, or was this a case of rushed judgment and coerced confession? The story of Francis Choi unfolds as a haunting exploration of justice, betrayal, and the struggle for truth. A narrative where the line between victim and perpetrator becomes dangerously blurred. Francis's trial began after a lengthy delay, hindered by insufficient evidence and mounting uncertainty. The court struggled to reach a clear conclusion. Ultimately, the jury's inability to agree resulted in a mistrial declared on January 25, 2018. Kenneth's defense was firm. His attorney argued that Kenneth had no involvement in the fire. He wasn't present at the scene, carried no gasoline, and had cooperated fully with the investigation. After days of deliberation, the jury found Kenneth not guilty. He walked free, leaving Francis to await her fate behind bars. In January 2011, Francis faced her second trial. This time, Kenneth had become the prosecution's key witness. In a shocking revelation, he admitted to writing the arson plans and placing 2 gasoline-filled bottles on the basement stairs. Actions he claimed were at Francis's request. Kenneth testified that he witnessed Francis pouring gasoline before the fire erupted. Yet, even with this damning testimony, the jury remained divided. Another mistrial. Francis remained imprisoned, her future uncertain. After nearly 8 years in confinement, Francis was granted bail on February 25, 2011. She was allowed to return home, but was tethered by a GPS monitor, her movements restricted. She could only leave for medical appointments, church services, or court appearances. Her third trial loomed. On May 2, 2011, it began under a shadow. 2 days prior, Kenneth, facing drug trafficking charges, fled to Hong Kong. His absence was glaring, but the court allowed his prior testimony to stand. The prosecution leaned on expert analysis. Gasoline traces were allegedly found on Francis's sweatpants. Was it accidental or evidence of guilt? The jury weighed these questions for 2 weeks before delivering their verdict. Guilty. 2 counts of murder and arson. A life sentence without parole. Francis's family believed the verdict was a miscarriage of justice. They maintained her innocence, convinced Kenneth was the true culprit. In Massachusetts, a first-degree murder conviction automatically triggers an appeal. Yet, the process was slow, grueling. For years, progress stalled. It wasn't until 2015 that momentum returned. John Barter, a seasoned attorney, took up Francis's cause. He pored over trial records, investigative reports, forensic analyses. What he found shook him: errors, omissions, and troubling questions of fairness. Recognizing the depth of the injustice, Barter reached out to the Boston University School of Law's Innocence Project. Together, they unearthed critical evidence. First, racial bias. Barter discovered that prosecutors Karen O'Sullivan and John Bradley exhibited prejudice against Asian individuals. Emails, once hidden, revealed racist and sexist comments about Francis and her family. It took 5 years of legal battles to obtain these documents, but when they surfaced, the depth of bias was undeniable. Second, a suppression of truth. The prosecution and police had concealed Kenneth's history: drug dealing, strained relationships, and his own arson attempts after Francis's imprisonment. They failed to disclose that Kenneth had set 2 fires at his grandfather's home, or that his testimony may have been coached. Original police notes, thought destroyed, were found, contradicting courtroom testimonies. Third, forensic revelations. Expert analysis revealed no gasoline traces on Francis's clothing. Kenneth's clothes, shockingly, had never been tested. His fingerprints, however, were found on the arson plans. Fire investigators concluded the blaze started in the basement mattress, not the staircase as Kenneth had claimed. Fourth, a pivotal witness. Kenneth's former girlfriend came forward, testifying that Kenneth confessed to setting the fire for revenge against his grandparents. This testimony, overlooked in prior trials, cast new doubts. Fifth, missed opportunities. Francis's earlier attorneys had failed to challenge evidence or investigate Kenneth's role deeply enough. These oversights left Francis vulnerable to conviction. In March 2020, Francis's legal team petitioned for her release. After 17 years behind bars, she had transformed, earning a sociology degree, training service dogs, and rebuilding her sense of self. On April 17, 2020, she was granted bail. Finally, on September 29, 2020, the court dismissed all charges. The judge cited misleading police statements, fabricated evidence, racial bias, and ineffective legal defense. The prospect of a fourth trial was abandoned. Francis was free. 17 years stolen. Years that could have been spent pursuing dreams, building a future. Instead, Francis fought for her life within the confines of a prison. Her case exposed deep flaws in the justice system, bias, negligence, and errors that cost her nearly 2 decades. Though free, scars remain. Yet, Francis's resilience stands as a testament to human endurance and the fight for justice, reminding us all that the pursuit of truth is never easy, but always necessary. And though the case is closed, its echoes remain, a haunting reminder of a system's failure and one woman's unwavering strength to overcome it. Late on the night of July 10th, 2001, the North Ryde Police Department in New South Wales, Australia, received a chilling distress call. The voice on the other end was frantic, claiming, "Someone has shot my parents. I think they're not breathing. There's a lot of blood everywhere. Help me." Police officers and medical personnel quickly arrived at the scene, finding a horrifying tragedy. Out of a family of 4, only one person had survived. They discovered the lone survivor, Seth Gonzalez, huddled in the corner of the garage, appearing devastated. Yet, just 3 days after the incident, Seth's behavior raised suspicions as he anxiously inquired about his inheritance. At the funeral, he performed one sweet day, but soon after, used government compensation to purchase a luxury car. This behavior triggered deeper scrutiny by the police. The Gonzalez family background. The Gonzalez family had emigrated from the Philippines and built a successful life in Australia. Teddy Gonzalez, born in 1954 in Baguio City, Philippines, was a resilient and hardworking man. After surviving poverty and a devastating earthquake that destroyed his hotel business, he moved to Australia with his wife Mary and their 2 children, Seth and Claudine. Teddy and Mary were devout Catholics, hardworking, and invested heavily in their children's education. By 1993, Teddy had established a successful immigration law office, securing a comfortable life for his family in North Ryde. Their home, a luxurious villa on Collins Street, symbolized years of perseverance and determination. The tragic day. On July 10th, 2001, Teddy and Mary went to work, while Claudine, on summer break, stayed home. Seth attended school, visited his father's office, and had evening plans with friends. Claudine, still celebrating her 18th birthday from the previous day, had been in touch with friends, but suddenly ceased communication. At 11:45 p.m., Seth returned home and made the emergency call. Seth claimed to have seen 2 figures fleeing the scene and tried to rush into the house, but was held back by a neighbor. Despite the swift arrival of authorities, Teddy, Mary, and Claudine were already dead. Contrary to Seth's claim, the victims were not shot, but brutally attacked with sharp objects. The investigation. The initial investigation entertained the possibility of a hate crime due to Seth's mention of a previous road rage incident where someone yelled racial slurs at the family. However, evidence began to contradict this theory. Valuable items and cash remained untouched, indicating robbery was not the motive. The house was suspiciously tidy, with open drawers and closets, but neatly arranged contents. The family's 6 dogs were unharmed and locked away. The timeline of deaths indicated Claudine and Mary were killed first, followed by Teddy. Further investigation revealed disturbing details. Claudine's last known activity was a text sent at 4:10 p.m., placing her time of death shortly after. Mary was likely killed upon returning home from work around 5:30 p.m. Teddy made his last known call at 6:23 p.m., with his death estimated shortly after 7 p.m. The condition of the crime scene suggested a staged break-in, with a broken window that showed no signs of external entry. The aftermath. As evidence mounted, suspicion turned towards Seth. His inconsistent behavior, including his immediate concern for inheritance and purchase of luxury items, only deepened doubts. By 2004, Seth Gonzalez was convicted of the murders. Despite maintaining his innocence, his appeals have consistently been denied, the latest rejection occurring on April 3, 2023. This case, marked by deception and tragedy, continues to haunt the memories of those who knew the Gonzalez family, serving as a chilling reminder of how greed and lies can unravel even the closest of bonds. As Seth entered the house, his work attire and the briefcase beside him painted the picture of a routine evening. However, if this had been an attack targeting Asians, the assailant wouldn't have patiently waited for each family member to return home, nor would they have arrived unarmed, forcing them to use whatever was available at the scene. After killing everyone, the perpetrator even took the time to shower, as evidenced by water found on the bathroom floor. 6 days after the incident, the police asked Seth to recount the events of that night in detail. This time, they noticed inconsistencies. Seth claimed he arrived at the front of his house around 6 p.m., but didn't get out of the car after receiving a text saying dinner had been delayed by 2 hours. With rain falling, Seth chose not to go inside. Instead, he called the house phone, but no one answered. He then drove to meet a friend in Blacktown, 28 kilometers away. Seth stated he spent 2 hours searching for the new address, without success, finally meeting his friend at 8 p.m. for dinner and video games. Seth said he returned home at 11:45 p.m. and called the police. He particularly emphasized finding his sister Claudine bleeding and claimed he attempted first aid. However, this account had glaring issues. The notion that Seth couldn't find his friend's new address after 2 hours was illogical. The forensic report also contradicted his statements. Claudine had been dead for some time and could not have been bleeding. There were no signs of CPR having been performed. Seth's mention of seeing 2 figures was also dubious. Multiple police reenactments concluded that the noise from Seth driving into the garage and entering the house would have alerted any intruders, giving them time to flee. It would have been impossible for Seth to see anyone if they had been there. This led the police to suspect Seth, the sole survivor. They searched his room, finding a piece of clothing with traces of blue paint matching the writing on the crime scene wall. They also seized his computer and an empty shoebox. Purchasing an identical pair of shoes, police matched them to bloody footprints at the scene. Seth's internet history from February to July 2001 revealed searches related to plant poisons. Following this lead, police discovered that Seth had purchased highly toxic plant seeds on June 24th, though the plant's name remained undisclosed under government order. Coincidentally, a week before the murders, Seth's mother Mary was hospitalized with severe stomach pain and diarrhea, later diagnosed as colitis. police now suspected poisoning. During his third police interrogation, Seth claimed he had purchased the seeds due to heartbreak and disillusionment. This lie was clumsy, but without direct evidence, police couldn't charge him. Instead, they wiretapped his phone and implemented a sting operation. Seth's behavior also raised suspicions. On the day of the press conference, he inquired about inheritance. At the funeral, his choice of songs shocked guests. He later moved into a luxury apartment, refurbished his mother's car with government compensation, and lied about having brain cancer to scam relatives for 190,000 Australian dollars. The fake documents he presented ended up with the police, leading to the suspension of his compensation payments. Running out of funds, Seth sold valuables and ordered a Lexus worth 173,000 Australian dollars. When cautioned by the salesperson, he casually replied, "Don't worry, I've inherited money." Seth's Aunt Emily also recounted a strange encounter on the night of the murders. Around 6 p.m., while picking up her son, she noticed Seth's car parked in the garage, though the house was dark and silent. She rang the doorbell thrice but received no answer. About to look inside, she saw a figure move. She recalled the 6 dogs that should have barked, but there was silence. Uneasy, she left. Additionally, a client of Seth's father reported seeing Seth's car between 4:15 and 4:30 p.m. 2 months later, the police's sting operation progressed. An undercover officer befriended Seth, eventually hinting at an informant within the police. Seth, falling for the trap, asked the officer for information about the investigation. When the officer casually mentioned someone had seen Seth's car at 4 p.m., Seth began crafting a second alibi. By January 2002, Seth claimed he arrived home before 4:30 p.m., but left for a brothel, embarrassed to admit it earlier. However, police wiretaps recorded Seth calling the brothel, asking about security cameras and guest registries. The prostitute he claimed to visit had been on leave. Seth later arranged for a taxi driver to support his alibi, but it was revealed that the driver was paid to provide a false statement. Crucial evidence emerged when Seth, convinced of a police informant, provided the undercover officer with a hand-drawn crime scene sketch. It included detailed times of death, information only the perpetrator could know. The handwriting matched that at the crime scene. Before his arrest, Seth staged an assault, claiming an unknown assailant attacked him. Medical exams found no head injuries, casting doubt on his claim. This led police to suspect Seth might target his grandmother, the will's executor. The joint will from 1998 stipulated that if both parents died, assets would be divided between Seth and Claudine. Fearing for the grandmother's safety, police arrested Seth on June 13, 2002, charging him with murder. After the arrest, deeper insights emerged. Teddy and Mary had worked tirelessly, accumulating wealth and holding high expectations for their children. They envisioned Seth as a cardiac surgeon, but he struggled academically, passionately pursuing music. After dropping out of school, he became the lead singer of a band, even creating a fan club. However, parental pressure and his failures may have driven him toward the horrific actions that ended his family's lives. Seth Gonzalez's life appeared outwardly successful, marked by his rising music career and his social charm. But beneath this surface was a storm of frustration and insecurity. Enrolled in law school at his father's insistence, Seth struggled to meet academic expectations. Despite receiving a car as an incentive, the pressure from his parents only intensified. Seth's academic performance mysteriously improved after he personalized his car with a license plate bearing his name. The praise from his parents became addictive, driving him to secretly alter his grades. When his sister caught him in the act and exposed his actions, she also revealed his long-kept secret of bedwetting. and embarrassment Seth had endured into adulthood. This humiliation, combined with his family's constant pressure, planted dark seeds of resentment. His relationship with his family continued to deteriorate. Seth's parents strictly controlled his social life, even sending his sister away to Melbourne to end an early relationship. When Seth faced similar parental interference with his girlfriend, the tension escalated. Threats of disinheritance, confiscation of his car, and exile back to the Philippines loomed over him, suffocating his sense of freedom. By mid-2001, Seth's frustration reached a breaking point. After receiving poor grades and facing his parents' harsh words, he devised a sinister plan. On June 24th, he ordered toxic plant seeds, concocting a lie to expedite delivery. On July 1st, he laced his mother's food with the poison. Though she fell ill, she eventually recovered, much to Seth's dismay. Determined, he staged letters to misdirect suspicion towards food poisoning. The tension climaxed after another argument with his mother on July 6th. The threat of being sent away filled him with dread. On July 9th, following his sister's birthday, Seth's isolation deepened. His car was confiscated, his allowance reduced, and his academic failures loomed. Resentment transformed into resolve. Seth decided to eliminate his family. On July 10th, Seth executed his plan. Armed with a baseball bat and kitchen knives, he attacked his family. Attempting to stage the scene as a racially motivated crime, he painted slurs on the walls. Yet paint residue on his jacket would later betray him. Seth spent the evening with a friend, hoping to establish an alibi. Returning home late, he was forced to call the police himself. His web of lies unraveled, exposing his deceit and desperation. In 2004, Seth was sentenced to 3 life terms, his future sealed by careless mistakes. Like the rare toxic plant he had discarded in his garden, the family home became a haunted property, its tragic history staining its walls. Buyers came and went, unaware or later horrified by its past. The house stood as a silent witness to Seth's crimes, a monument to a family's destruction. Seth's lies, once grand and sweeping, collapsed under the weight of truth. His life now confined to a prison cell, he would never learn the meaning behind his name, a revelation his father had promised, but never delivered. The story of Seth Gonzalez is one of ambition, lies, and the crushing weight of familial expectations. But what haunted the Gonzalez home after the crimes? Neighbors whispered of strange occurrences, shadows that lingered, doors that creaked open without cause, the faint sound of weeping echoing through the empty halls. A year after the house was sold, the new owners reported unsettling experiences. Lights flickered without explanation, and cold drafts whispered through sealed windows. Some claimed to see figures moving past curtained windows, though the house stood empty. One evening, a neighbor saw a figure resembling Mary Gonzalez standing by the upstairs window, staring out into the dark street. Yet no one lived there at the time. Others heard faint cries in the night, as though the house itself mourned the family it had lost. Urban legends began to take root. Was the house cursed? Did the restless spirits of the Gonzalez family linger, bound by betrayal and grief? The community, once eager to forget, could not ignore the growing tales of the haunted home. In 2007, a local journalist began an investigation. Interviews with previous owners and neighbors revealed a pattern of unease. Dreams plagued residents, nightmares of betrayal, and the suffocating sensation of being watched. Some moved out within months, unable to bear the oppressive atmosphere. The house became a local legend, known not just for its tragic past, but for the eerie presence that seemed to inhabit it. Paranormal investigators visited, capturing whispers and shadowy figures on film. Yet, No explanation satisfied the unease that gripped the neighborhood. The question remains, do the sins of the past linger, binding the spirits of the lost? Or is it the collective guilt and fear of a community that cannot escape the shadow of the crimes committed within those walls? The truth may never be known, but one thing is certain. The Gonzalez home stands as a chilling monument to a family's tragic end and the darkness that may never let go. Ichiro entered the house, removing his shoes at the entrance. Reaching for his slippers, he noticed faint traces of blood wiped away on the floor. Startled, he sensed something was terribly wrong. Quickly walking deeper into the house, he called out for his parents but received no response. As he moved through the house, he saw more bloodstains in various spots. He continued upstairs to check the situation, but after searching all the rooms on the second and third floors, his parents were nowhere to be found. Growing increasingly anxious, Ichiro tried calling his parents, but both phones were turned off. Not knowing where his parents could be, he called his father's bar, only to be informed they hadn't come in that day. Feeling even more alarmed, he then called his sister, who also hadn't seen or heard from their parents. By this time, it was 8:50 p.m. Ichiro feared his parents had been kidnapped and immediately called the police. Upon receiving the report, the police arrived at the scene promptly, securing the area and preserving the crime scene. They questioned Ichiro, the eldest son of the homeowners. Ichiro explained that when he left for work at 8 a.m., his parents seemed completely normal, but by 8:30 p.m., they had mysteriously disappeared. A thorough examination of the house revealed everything in its usual tidy state. There were no signs of forced entry, and no valuables were missing. However, both cell phones were nowhere to be found. Investigators collected 10 blood samples from the floor and a knife. Tests revealed that most of the blood belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi, but DNA from an unknown man was also found. Based on the evidence on the first floor, police suspected that the couple was attacked at the entrance. Authorities believed the likelihood of survival was low, and if they were alive, they were likely gravely injured. Since no valuables were stolen, robbery was ruled out. Given the family's wealth, kidnapping seemed a possibility, though no ransom calls were received. The police reviewed phone records, confirming the last known location of the couple's phones was at their home. Surveillance footage showed Mr. Takahashi leaving at 1 p.m. and Mrs. Takahashi at 1:30 p.m. Mrs. Takahashi returned at 4:30 p.m., after which neither appeared on any footage. The police learned that Mr. Takahashi, who ran a bar linked to illegal activities, often went out at night. Despite the association, the couple was seen as kind and caused no trouble. Suspicion briefly fell on Ichiro after reports of arguments over money. However, his colleagues provided an alibi, and he was cleared. Reviewing surveillance footage again, the police noticed a masked man and woman near the house after Ichiro left. They were seen discarding something in a nearby trash bin. Upon inspection, police found blood-stained clothes later confirmed to belong to the Takahashis. On the third day, an officer noticed a strange odor near the first-floor bathroom. Inspecting a gap beneath the floor, they found 2 large cabinets. Inside were the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi, each with multiple stab wounds. Ichiro was devastated. Autopsies confirmed the time of death as January 16th, 2 days earlier. Further investigation identified the woman in the footage as Morales Hazel Alava, Ichiro's ex-girlfriend. Ichiro recounted a phone call with her on the day of the incident, during which she expressed a desire to reconcile. He declined and later received a cryptic message, "It's over now." Ichiro revealed their relationship ended after his parents opposed their marriage, particularly due to Morales owing him around 600,000 yen. After the incident, Morales abruptly moved out of her apartment. A friend reported seeing her frantically searching for bandages at a convenience store on January 17th. The police continue their search for Morales, now a prime suspect in the investigation. Tracked down Morales and found her at an inn in Fukushima Prefecture in the early hours of January 19th. Morales was arrested at the inn. When the police asked her where she had been on the day of the incident, she claimed that she had been helping a Filipino friend find a place to live and denied any involvement in the case. The police believed that Morales didn't act alone. Even if she had a weapon, it would have been nearly impossible for her to overpower two victims on her own. Her accomplice was likely the man seen discarding the clothes in the surveillance footage. The autopsy results showed that the victims' wounds were quite deep, with some being fatal, particularly those near the heart, injuries that Morales likely couldn't have inflicted by herself. 2 days later, the police located the man believed to be Morales' accomplice. Surveillance cameras captured images of him purchasing 3 cans of beer at a convenience store in Suzaki City at 10:20 p.m. on the night of the incident. He was wearing a hat pulled low over his forehead and a mask, with his right hand bandaged. The man was identified as Dela Cruz Brian Jefferson Risen, a Filipino national. The police quickly apprehended him. After his arrest, he couldn't withstand the pressure and confessed everything to the police. Dela, 33 years old, had known Morales since childhood. In July 2023, he came to Japan as a trainee and worked for a construction company. He lived in a small apartment in Suzaki City. Besides Morales and a few Filipino friends, he didn't know anyone else and led a mostly solitary life. 2 months before the incident, Dela and his girlfriend, along with Morales, had dinner at a barbecue restaurant to celebrate their reunion. Dela claimed he didn't know Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi at all, and that the entire plan was Morales' idea. He was merely assisting her. On the other hand, Morales continued to remain silent. Despite her lack of cooperation with Dela's confession, the sequence of events began to unfold. Morales had been observing the Takahashi family for a long time, learning their routines, and had even secretly entered their home several times. She reached out to Dela, her acquaintance, and laid out her plan. The two of them then prepared knives and plastic bags. At 8 a.m. on the day of the incident, Morales and Dela sneaked into the Takahashi house and hid in a room. Since Morales had previously been to the Takahashi home and knew the door code, the two were able to enter without alerting Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi. Around noon, while hiding inside the house, Morales called Ichiro. This call might have been her final internal struggle, solidifying her resolve to carry out her plan. At 1 p.m., Mr. Tokito left the house and returned shortly afterward. Half an hour later, Mrs. Nishimi also left. Once she was gone, the two attackers quickly ambushed Mr. Tokito, resulting in his death. At 4:30 p.m., Mrs. Nishimi returned home. As soon as she stepped inside, she was ambushed by the two. Although she tried to resist, she couldn't overpower the attackers. After being repeatedly stabbed, she collapsed. Later in the afternoon, Ichiro called Morales, but she didn't answer because she and Dela were busy dealing with the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi, hiding them under the floor to delay their discovery. Together, they placed the bodies into plastic containers and concealed them in the storage space beneath the bathroom floor on the first floor. They took the Takahashi's phones, turned them off, but couldn't remember where they discarded them. By the time they finished hiding the bodies, it was 5:30 p.m. Only then did Morales respond to Ichiro's text. Little did Ichiro know that her message, "It's over now," had such a chilling significance. Afterward, Morales and Dela removed their blood-stained coats, did a quick cleanup, and wiped the blood off the floor using the clothes they were wearing. On their way out, they casually tossed the bloodied clothes into a nearby trash bin. What puzzled the police was why the two didn't strike immediately after sneaking into the house in the morning, but instead waited until the Takahashis left before taking action. However, both Morales and Della refused to reveal the reason. One theory is that Morales wanted to wait for Mrs. Nishimi to return home so she could exact revenge on her for opposing Morales' relationship with Ichiro. Della, as an accomplice, followed Morales' wishes and didn't act impulsively. Another possibility is that they were concerned that the noise might attract the attention of the neighbors, so they waited for a more opportune moment to carry out their plan. After the crime, Morales moved out of her old apartment and found an inn to hide from the police. During the struggle with Mr. Takedo, Della injured his hand badly when it was cut by the knife. Afraid to seek treatment at a nearby hospital, he returned to his apartment in Suzaki City and later sought care at a local hospital. However, Della wasn't very adept at evading investigation. He had no real sense of being a fugitive, made only minimal efforts to conceal himself, and was caught on surveillance cameras when he went out to buy beer. On the other hand, through their investigation, the police learned more about Morales' background. In November 2017, Morales, then 23, came to Japan from the Philippines on a low-cost airline. With her youthful and attractive appearance, she landed a job as a receptionist at a bar. The bar primarily employed young women from the Philippines, just like her. This type of bar, catering mainly to foreigners, had been quite popular in Japan since 1998. However, entertainment venues employing foreign workers had come under strict scrutiny. Initially, Japan only issued permits for foreign performers to come to Japan to perform or work. But after numerous cases of people exploiting tourism visas to work illegally, the Japanese government intensified its inspections. However, if foreigners marry a Japanese citizen, they face far fewer restrictions. Not only do they have more freedom in choosing a career, but their residency period is extended, ranging from a minimum of 6 months to a maximum of 5 years. This is something many foreigners aspire to achieve, to secure a longer residency. Morales entered into a sham marriage with the son of the bar owner. Even though the bar owner's son already had a girlfriend, Morales and several other Filipino women at the bar also engaged in sham marriages with him to extend their stay in Japan. All of this took place before Morales arrived at the bar. Among the regular patrons was a 58-year-old wealthy man named Kamen Sukusu, who frequently visited the bar. He was known to spend up to 1 million yen in a single night. People at the bar often saw Kamen Sukusu sitting on the sofa, chatting under the dim lights while Morales poured drinks for him. As their relationship grew closer, Kamen Sukusu began buying her expensive gifts and taking her out on dates. He visited the bar 3 to 4 times a week. Despite having many customers, Morales was the top performer in the bar, which caused jealousy among the other girls. Morales was a typical Filipino who placed a high value on family. Her mother, stepfather, and younger sister all lived in the Philippines and largely depended on her for financial support. As Kamen Sukusu spent more time with Morales, his feelings for her deepened. But one day, he unexpectedly discovered that Morales had posted wedding photos on social media, which left him feeling displeased and betrayed. Morales explained that it was merely a fake marriage to secure a longer residency, and their relationship soon returned to normal. At the bar, Kamen Sukusu spent nearly 100 million yen, equivalent to about $680,000, with most of that amount going to Morales. However, Morales was unaware that this wealthy patron's fortune was as tainted as her sham marriage. Murder. When paramedics arrived, they noticed something odd. Despite claiming to have found his wife unconscious, Leong Wing Sing showed no signs of attempting CPR or any other resuscitation efforts. As a firefighter with emergency medical training, his reaction seemed strangely passive. Additionally, his account of finding his wife contradicted medical findings. Her body had already gone into full rigor mortis, meaning she'd been dead for at least 9 to 12 hours before the paramedics were called. This immediately raised red flags for investigators. The secret behind the staged crime scene. As detectives combed through the apartment, they noted inconsistencies that didn't match a standard robbery homicide. The most glaring issue was how the perpetrator could have entered and exited without being caught on surveillance cameras. Given that the apartment complex had strict security measures, including card access entrances and 24-hour surveillance in hallways and stairwells, it seemed nearly impossible for an outsider to break in and commit the crime. This pointed to someone already inside the apartment that morning. Forensics revealed another key detail. While the scene appeared to be ransacked, there were no foreign fingerprints or footprints, only those belonging to Leong Wing Sing and his wife. Investigators suspected the crime scene had been staged to look like a robbery in an attempt to mislead them. The final nail in the coffin came from the autopsy report. Toxicology tests detected a high concentration of sleeping pills in Lao Chu Yin's system, enough to render her unconscious for hours. This was crucial, because if the victim was unconscious when she was strangled, it meant there was likely no struggle, contradicting the husband's claims that a robber had attacked her. Detectives realized the most logical explanation. Leong Wing Sing had drugged his wife, waited until she was unconscious, and then strangled her with a towel while she lay in bed. After ensuring she was dead, he remained in the apartment for hours, carefully staging the crime scene to resemble a robbery before going out for his usual morning run. Upon returning home, he made a dramatic 999 emergency call, pretending to have just discovered her lifeless body. A double life and a hidden affair. Despite the mounting evidence, investigators still needed a motive. By digging into Leong Wing Sing's financial records and personal life, they uncovered a shocking secret. He was having an affair with a younger woman. This woman, identified as Chung Mei Lin, was a 26-year-old nightclub hostess whom Leong had been secretly supporting for nearly a year and a half. Leong had showered Chung with expensive gifts, paid her rent, and even sent her large sums of money, totaling over 500,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately 64,000 US dollars. Detectives found messages between the two, where Chung had been pressuring Leong to leave his wife and officially be with her. However, a divorce was not an option for Leong. A divorce would have meant financial ruin. He would have to pay spousal support, divide their joint savings, and likely lose custody of his 2 children. He was also drowning in credit card debt, largely due to the extravagant spending on his mistress. This led police to conclude that Leong saw murder as his only way out. He could inherit his wife's life insurance payout and finally be with Chung without the financial burden of a divorce. The arrest and confession. Under interrogation, Leong Wing Sing initially denied everything, insisting that a robber must have broken in and killed his wife. However, when confronted with the timeline inconsistencies, forensic evidence, and his financial records, he broke down and confessed. He admitted that he had been planning his wife's murder for weeks. On the night of September 29th, he crushed sleeping pills into her tea before bed. After she fell into a deep sleep, he waited until around 3 a.m., then wrapped a towel around her neck and strangled her. The next morning, while his children were getting ready for school, he acted completely normal, even preparing their breakfast. Once they left, he pretended to go for a run, only to return and stage the scene as a robbery gone wrong. His biggest mistake was miscalculating the time of death, assuming that police wouldn't be able to detect the time discrepancy between his story and the actual forensic evidence. With the confession and overwhelming evidence, Leong Wing Sing was formally charged with first-degree murder. The case became one of Hong Kong's most widely publicized domestic homicide cases, serving as a case study in police academies for its complex forensic deception and psychological manipulation. In April 2004, Leong Wing Sing was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His mistress, Chung Mei Lin, was found not guilty of involvement, as there was no evidence proving she had knowledge of or participated in the crime. To this day, the firefighter's locked room murder case remains one of Hong Kong's most infamous cases, demonstrating how even the most secure places can become the scene of unimaginable horror when driven by greed, betrayal, and desperation, to suffer significant financial losses. She wrote about how the burden of debt weighed heavily on her and how she felt like a failure for not being able to provide for her family as she had once promised. In this letter, she also mentioned feeling physically unwell, writing, "Lately, my body has felt weak and the pain in my arm won't go away. Perhaps this is my karma, but I pray for peace, for my family, and for a future where my children don't have to bear my mistakes." This final letter painted a picture of a woman struggling not only with betrayal, but with deep personal regrets. It also suggested that in the days leading up to her death, Lao Qian was in a vulnerable state, both physically and emotionally, something her husband, Leung Wing Sing, might have used to his advantage. The final pieces of evidence. The police, now armed with a clearer motive, dug deeper into Leung Wing Sing's relationship with Choi Shu Ying, the woman from the love letter. They discovered that she was a 38-year-old bar hostess from Shenzhen, and their affair had been going on for over 7 years. What made this even more incriminating was that only 2 months before the murder, Leong had transferred nearly 50,000 Hong Kong dollars to Choi, despite claiming he was in financial distress. Phone records also showed that Leong and Choi spoke for nearly 30 minutes the night before Lao Chen's death, and after his wife was found dead, he called Choi again, this time for over an hour. When confronted with this evidence, Leong denied everything at first, but faced with the undeniable proof of his affair and financial transactions, he changed his story. He now claimed that Choi had nothing to do with the murder, and insisted that the affair was just an emotional escape because he had felt trapped in a loveless marriage. But the investigators weren't convinced. They believed that his affair was not just an escape, it was his reason for wanting his wife dead. The arrest and confession. With overwhelming evidence, Leong Wing Sing was formally arrested on October 10th, 2003, charged with the premeditated murder of his wife, Lao Qian. Under intense interrogation, he finally cracked. He admitted that he had drugged his wife, strangled her while she was unconscious, and staged the break-in, all to make it look like an unfortunate robbery gone wrong. But the real reason was far more sinister. He wanted to get rid of her, so he could be with Choi Shu Ying. He wanted to cash in on the insurance money to clear his debts and start a new life. The police later searched Choi Shu Ying's apartment in Shenzhen, but found no evidence that she had directly participated in the crime. She denied any knowledge of the murder plot, and without proof of her involvement, she was never charged. The verdict and aftermath. At trial, Leong pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, avoiding the death penalty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in April 2004. His children, now orphaned, were placed under the care of their maternal relatives. They later expressed that they wanted nothing to do with their father ever again. As for Choi Shu Ying, she reportedly moved away from Shenzhen and disappeared from public view. Some rumors suggested that she moved overseas, but to this day, her whereabouts remain unknown. The case of Leong Wing Sing, the firefighter turned murderer, remains one of Hong Kong's most chilling domestic crime stories. A brutal reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't a stranger in the dark. It's the one sleeping beside you. Next case, the missing nurse. Hospitals are places where people go to heal, but for some, they become the last place they are ever seen alive. On June 14, 2011, Li Wen, a a 29-year-old nurse working at Guangzhou First People's Hospital, vanished without a trace. What made her disappearance even more disturbing was that security footage showed her entering an elevator, but she was never seen exiting. Her case would go on to become one of China's most puzzling disappearances, sparking urban legends, conspiracy theories, and a police investigation that uncovered shocking secrets within the hospital walls. The disappearance. That night, Li Wen was scheduled for the night shift, working from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. She was known to be a responsible, well-liked nurse with no history of mental illness or personal problems. At 11:47 p.m., CCTV footage captured her stepping into an elevator on the third floor, where the hospital's staff dormitory and break room were located. She appeared calm, holding a small bag, presumably containing snacks or personal belongings. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. By morning, when Li Wen didn't report for duty at 8 a.m., her colleagues assumed she had left early due to illness or an emergency. But when she failed to respond to calls and texts, concern grew. At 10:30 a.m., hospital security began checking CCTV footage, and what they found sent chills down their spines. Li Wen was seen entering the elevator at 11:47 p.m. The elevator doors closed. The elevator never opened again, at least not with her inside. She was never seen leaving the hospital premises. How could someone walk into an elevator and never come out? The investigation. By the time the police were involved, 48 hours had passed and no one had reported seeing or hearing from Li Wen. 1. The elevator mystery authorities checked the security footage multiple times, looking for any sign of what had happened inside the elevator. However, the camera inside the elevator was malfunctioning, meaning there was no footage of what happened once the doors closed. Technicians were brought in to inspect the elevator shaft, fearing that Li Wen might have fallen in. However, there was no body, no evidence of struggle, and no sign that the elevator doors had been forced open. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. 2. The abandoned locker. A search of her belongings revealed something strange. Her uniform and ID badge were still in her locker, suggesting that she hadn't intended to leave the hospital. Her phone was missing, but phone records showed no outgoing calls or messages after she entered the elevator. Her last conversation had been with a fellow nurse, Zhang Mei, where she simply said, "I'm heading down now. See you later." But she never arrived. The basement theory. The police turned their attention to the hospital basement, which was only accessible via the elevator or a back stairwell. According to hospital staff, the basement housed medical storage, old records, and an unused wing that had been closed off for years. It was a dark, rarely visited area, but some employees claimed that strange things happened there. One janitor, an older woman who had worked at the hospital for 15 years, whispered to police, "That place, it's cursed. Even if I hear noises down there, I don't go looking." When the police searched the basement, they found an old staff uniform in a pile of discarded clothing, scattered papers and abandoned hospital beds, a single shoe, identical to the ones worn by Li Wen. But Li Wen herself was nowhere to be found. A chilling discovery. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something even more terrifying, a series of missing persons cases connected to the hospital. Between 2003 and 2011, 3 other women had vanished, all working night shifts at the hospital. 2003, a 34-year-old cleaner named Wu Ai disappeared after finishing her shift. 2007, a 26-year-old nurse named Huang Lili was last seen walking near the basement stairwell. 2009, a 31-year-old intern doctor named Chen Yu left work after midnight and was never seen again. All 3 cases remained unsolved. The connection between these disappearances sent shockwaves through the hospital. Could it be a serial predator? A hidden passage in the basement? Or something even more sinister? A ghostly encounter? The case took a bizarre turn when a new nurse came forward with a frightening claim. A week after Li Wen vanished, she had been working a night shift when she heard whispers near the elevator. When she turned to look, she saw a blurry reflection on the metal doors, one that didn't match her own. The whispers grew louder until she could make out the words, "Help me, I'm still here." Frightened, she ran, refusing to work night shifts again. The story quickly spread among staff, and soon, many employees refused to go near the basement at night. The hospital's secret. Determined to find out the truth, police began interviewing longtime hospital employees, and one old security guard finally broke his silence. He claimed that years ago, during renovations, a temporary morgue had been set up in the basement, but due to poor ventilation and sanitation issues, some bodies decomposed faster than expected. Instead of reporting it, hospital officials quietly disposed of them in an unknown location. Could Li Wen's disappearance have something to do with this dark secret? Despite intense investigations, no trace of Li Wen has ever been found. The hospital shut down the basement permanently, sealing off the old storage rooms. Security was tightened, and new rules prohibited staff from using the elevator alone at night. To this day, some claim they still hear whispers near the basement elevator, and some believe Li Wen is still there, trapped between this world and the next. Her case remains one of China's most chilling hospital disappearances. Next case, the last taxi ride, the disappearance of Zhang Min at 3:42 a.m. Zhang Min, a 32-year-old office worker in Beijing, hailed a taxi outside a late-night cafe. It was a cold winter morning on December 9th, 2017, and she was heading home after an office party. She texted her best friend, "Just got in a taxi. See you tomorrow." But she never arrived. By dawn, she had vanished without a trace. Her case would become one of Beijing's most baffling disappearances, leading to a terrifying revelation about a string of missing passengers, and a mystery that still haunts the city today. The final moments, Zhang Min was last seen on CCTV footage outside Blue Moon Cafe in the Chaoyang district of Beijing. The footage showed her wearing a dark red coat and carrying a small handbag, waving down a taxi on a nearly empty street. Getting into the back seat at exactly 3:42 a.m. The footage was clear, and the taxi was identified as a white FAW Volkswagen Santana, a common model for Beijing taxis. But here's where things got strange. The license plate number was not visible due to glare from the streetlights. The CCTV camera at the next intersection never recorded the taxi passing through. There were no further records of Zhang Min's phone activity after she entered the taxi. It was as if she and the taxi had disappeared into thin air. The investigation won. The untraceable taxi. The first thing police did was try to track the taxi through the city's GPS system, but they ran into a shocking issue. In Beijing, all taxis are required to have GPS tracking and fare meters that log every trip. However, there was no record of a taxi picking up Zhang Min at 3:42 a.m. The nearby taxis that were on duty did not match the vehicle in the footage. It was as if this taxi wasn't officially registered. 2. The last phone signal. Zhang Min's phone was still powered on for approximately 18 minutes after she entered the taxi. The last location pinged was a highway exit near an abandoned toll booth, 7 kilometers away. After 4 a.m., her phone was either turned off or destroyed. Police rushed to the toll booth, but found nothing unusual. No CCTV cameras, no witnesses, no evidence. 3. The taxi driver's secret. As the case gained media attention, an anonymous tip came in. A woman claimed that she had escaped from a similar taxi 2 weeks earlier. She described a driver in his late 40s with a scar on his right hand, an unregistered taxi with a fake meter and missing identification sticker. The car doors had no inside handles, trapping her inside. She only escaped because she jumped out of the car when the driver stopped at a red light. She had reported the incident to the police, but since she wasn't harmed, the case wasn't taken seriously at the time. Now, detectives wondered, was Jiang Min taken by the same driver? A chilling connection. As investigators dug deeper, they found 5 more cases of missing women in Beijing, all last seen getting into taxis late at night. 2015, Liu Feng, 27, disappeared after leaving a bar. 2016, Wang Xia, 30, last seen outside a shopping mall. 2017, Chen Rui, 29, vanished after calling a cab from her apartment. 2017, Xu Mei, 25, missing after attending a concert. 2017, Jiang Min, 32, the latest victim. All had similar physical descriptions. All had entered a taxi alone at night. None of them were ever found. This wasn't just a random disappearance. This was the work of a predator. The underground rut. A break in the case came when police searched an old highway tunnel near the last location of Jiang Min's phone signal. Inside they found scratches on the concrete walls, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. A red hair tie, similar to the one Jiang Min was wearing that night. An old rusted metal door leading to a secret underground passage. When officers forced the door open, they made a horrifying discovery. Inside was a makeshift room containing ropes and zip ties, women's clothing, empty water bottles and food wrappers. A single, cracked phone, later confirmed to belong to Xu Mei, the missing woman from 2017. It was clear. This was where the victims were taken. But Jiang Min was nowhere to be found. The vanishing driver police intensified their search for the taxi driver, and after weeks of investigating, they finally identified a suspect, Liu Jianhai, a former taxi driver who had lost his license in 2014 due to assault allegations. He continued driving illegally, using a stolen taxi and fake license plates. He modified the car to remove inside door handles, trapping passengers inside. He preyed on women traveling alone at night, especially those who had been drinking or were distracted on their phones. But when police raided his last known address, he was gone. The only thing they found was a message scrawled on the wall in red ink. You'll never find them. Liu Jianhai had disappeared, just like his victims. To this day, Jiang Min's whereabouts remain unknown. The underground tunnel was sealed off, but no bodies were ever found. Liu Jianhai became one of China's most wanted fugitives, but has never been caught. The case remains open, with police believing that he may still be active somewhere in China. Some believe Jiang Min was never taken to the tunnel, that she may have been taken elsewhere, kept alive, or even trafficked. Others think she never left the taxi at all, that her body was hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. And then there are those who whisper that on quiet Beijing nights, some still see a white taxi with no driver, stopping for passengers who are never seen again. One thing is certain, Jiang Min's last taxi ride was a one-way trip into the unknown. Next case, the haunting of apartment 14B. In May 2019, newlyweds Chen Wei and Li Fang moved into a high-rise apartment in Beijing's Chaoyang district. It was a steel, spacious, modern, and far cheaper than similar places nearby. But from the first night, something felt off. The air inside was always cold, even when the heater was on. Footsteps echoed in the hallway at odd hours, but when they checked, no one was there. Objects moved on their own. A chair out of place, cabinet doors swinging open at night. And then there was the closet. A heavy wooden door, bolted shut, with a rusted chain wrapped around the handle. Their landlord told them never to open it. A strange warning. One evening, while taking out the trash, Chen Wei met an elderly woman from the apartment next door. She glanced at him, then at his door, her face darkening. "You live in 14B?" she asked. Chen Wei nodded. The old woman hesitated, then whispered, "Be careful. They never stay long." "Who?" Chen Wei asked. She didn't answer. She just shook her head and hurried back inside, locking her door behind her. The scratching sounds. That night, Li Fang was awakened by a faint scratching noise coming from inside the closet. At first, she thought it was a mouse or some trapped animal, but then it stopped, and a soft knock came from inside the closet door. She shook Chen Wei awake. "Did you hear that?" Before he could answer, the closet door rattled. Something inside was trying to get out, breaking the lock. By morning, the couple had had enough. They grabbed a hammer and smashed off the rusted chain. As the door creaked open, a wave of rotten air filled the room. Inside the closet, they found a single wooden chair positioned in the center, deep scratches on the walls, as if someone had clawed at them, a frayed noose still hanging from a metal hook in the ceiling, and on the floor, a single yellowed newspaper, folded neatly. The headline read, "Young woman found dead in apartment 14B, suicide suspected." The date, May 9, 2017, exactly 2 years before Chen Wei and Li Fang moved in. The truth about 14B terrified. The couple searched online and found the full story. The previous tenant, a woman named Zhang Rui, had been reported missing for weeks before her body was found hanging in the closet. The details were horrific. She had been dead for over a month before being discovered. Neighbors had complained about a foul smell, but the landlord ignored it. The cause of death was ruled a suicide, but friends insisted Zhang Rui had no reason to take her own life. The police report also noted something unusual. There were no footprints leading to the closet, despite the floor being dusty. The scratches on the walls didn't match Zhang Rui's fingernails, as if someone else had been trapped inside before her. It was almost as if something had been waiting for her. The final night. That night, the apartment felt different. The air was heavy. The lights flickered. At exactly 3:42 a.m., Li Fang woke up to find the closet door wide open, and in the darkness, a shadowy figure sat in the chair. It wasn't moving. It wasn't breathing. Then, in a voice that was both distant and near, it whispered, "I never left." Li Fang screamed. When Chen Wei turned on the lights,